Hello again, Struck. Today I will be bringing you a video which could serve as an overview of the latest Torchlight 3 update called an update for Dummies. The patch notes are long, there's 3 parts of patch notes on Steam, 3 separate posts, which is why I've decided to split this patch summary, patch breakdown into 3 separate videos so I can talk about certain things more in detail. The update is focused on bug fixes, quality of life updates, and also soaking up some of the community feedback that has been received after the Relics subclass update. The major points that the developers have highlighted in their first blog post are the 10 additional skill points, changing the mechanic how the Dusk Mage Dark Light buff works to make it one buff called Harmonic Form. More about that later. Difficulty tuning has also been done. There's also changes, little changes to the Legendarium and enchanting being made a more understandable experience for new players and those entering the game, as well as being able to extract legendary powers by finding the items rather than having to salvage those items. So as soon as you find a legendary item, you get its Legendarium power. There are also other things that I think are personal highlights for myself, such as the training dummy being a new addition to our fort, being able to test out our damages and our skills on it, such as the highlight of objects and pets and summons and all of those when they're behind structures, as well as highlighting when you hover the mouse over a wootable object or destructible object. Pretty nice addition for me. There's also a ton of other things, such as for example scaling of the UI, such as changes to mini dungeons, slightly getting them better, and legendary items appearing on the mini map. You can also see that the camera is a little bit more zoomed out on your fort, and a bunch of fixes for various skills, such as for example Snowstorm finally doing some damage, and I will be leveling 2 builds with that. So yeah, let's go through each section bit by bit, starting with the general section. Keep in mind the patch notes you're seeing on the screen are just highlights. It's not all of the patch notes. I can't talk about every single patch note in this video because it's gonna be a little bit too long than I wanted to. So I'm just gonna talk about my personal highlights. In regards to general updates, you would notice that they've done some changes to vocalization, a lot of changes to different vocalizations. Then there's various performance and optimization updates to skills, animations, sync loading and others. Then they fixed various hitches found in the UI, in the monster minion spawning, a bunch of animations and so on. There has been a lot of asset optimization. They fixed a crash in certain player quest component. They attempted to resolve a client crash that occurs after the server crashes with robustness checks, and also fixed an issue where Steam friends with nicknames cannot be invited to a party from the friends menu, but can from the nearby players, which was an interesting bug. I never realized this one. Then they also are pre-loading audio data in the main menu to prevent frequent reopens of the bank files. They updated the elite defense achievement description, equip items with at least 1337 defense. They've added various logging for errors, crashes, save game status, integrity checking, etc. And they've created linked ARC accounts feature to enable customer support version 2, which would be pretty nice to see how it works. And they've also enabled Udo on all platforms, and to those of you who may not know, Udo is the new compression system which supposedly results in faster loading of different things in the game. And next we're moving to user interface changes. You would notice the new title screen. It's nice, I love it myself. There are changes to party whisper UI elements, and they should now be hidden for players not currently in the game world. They fixed an issue where there is no way to join a player that is already in a party or even asked to join. Then there's also an updated party member names to be more consistent with other UI parts. They fixed issues where it would take a long time to for bidirectional blocking to take effect in party voice chat, and other fixes for the voice chat, where players would not be muted in voice chat even if they were blocked, or players could be stuck on mute if the platform blocked the user check, and it takes longer than the request to mute them in VVox. They've added new X-ray shader for monsters and environmental objects. They've added difficulty selection to now pop up at the end of the character creation. Also reordered the hair color options to appear to look nicer. Updated the description text with new paragraph about the difficulty effect on monsters and champions, which is pretty nice. Two tips added to the Relic energy bar and charge. They fixed some typos in certain skills such as Goblin Legion, 8-legged allies, and some others. They've added padding to the top and bottom of the options screen and set the panel to scale to fit height. They've applied more consistent highlighting to skill names in gear affix text, which is pretty nice, and they've changed how certain skills show up in the gear. For example, you no longer would see the Relic active skill or other things like that were Relic related. You would just see the specific skill in question. So if it gets triggered by Drain or the equivalents, it would be triggered by Drain or the equivalents. If it gets triggered by the big Relic power like Arachnid Assault, Summoning Smash and so on, you would see that exact skill there. And the same goes for the Mayhem skills such as Spinning Blade, Sword Smash, Venomous Maw and so on. So you would be able to see that skill there. But I think that was there from the previous update as well. So you will now receive an additional message if and only if your challenge level goes up. So they've added some changes to how this triggers, how this works, Fazeer related stuff. They fixed issues with gaps in the minimap, which was pretty interesting how it was cropping before. Hopefully it's fully sorted now. Legendary armor and weapon item drops are now visible on the minimap. My personal note about this is nice. I've been wanting for something like that. Now I'm wondering if they would consider reworking some of the legendary drop sounds to maybe be a little bit more celebratory. This is on my wish list. Then they've updated the skill panel backgrounds, and I love what McLean has done on those. Both the Relic and the regular class skills panels, they look amazing, and I hope you love it as much as I do. They've optimized the generic vendor gear icons to look better. I like how the new ones look. They've added more efficient gamepad targeting and a bunch of other gamepad changes. If you're interested about those, read the full patch notes. There's more under user interface regarding gamepad related changes. For example, one more thing that I've included in my highlight is the doubled gamepad legend shown at character selection screen. Now moving on to environment, the players who are disconnected or leave from Mapworks will no longer spawn into any other town than Travel Point. They fixed an issue where Mapworks portals could disappear when you created another one, and you can have as many face portals as you want now. They've fixed mini dungeons and updated them with new visual effects, names, player spawn points that are further from the warps, and a guaranteed rare wood chest for those mini dungeons. And more about mini dungeons, there's a fix where side rooms spawned no treasure chest, so that's now been fixed. And they've fixed the exploding hazard barrels that were able to deal too much damage. I guess it was about time for this to finally get changed. I'm happy about this myself. There's a bunch of other tweaks to hazards, and I'm gonna speak about those a little bit more in detail. Hazards now include the challenge level damage bonus in situations that used to ignore it. They fixed hazards in various goblin and high-hit areas that were doing too little damage. They tweaked the damage calculation for hazards that trigger on touch. They've set the hazard in the environment to properly scale with the level of the area, so they don't deal an endgame level of damage to you regardless of where you are in map scroll or phase dungeons, for instance. And they set all environmental hazards and their damage over time to not apply to your pet, as you don't have a way to make the pet move away from those hazards. They've adjusted the damage values for all environment hazards to be appropriate for the level of the area in which they are placed. They've added new flags to some Echo Cliffs levels, added life in the Grand Hall of Ekanok because it needed movement, and they fixed the Swampseer's alpaca hoarding problem in Maktar's Cove, which was the best bug ever. It was like a mosh pit full of alpacas. I wish that actually remained in the game. There's also a ton of visual effects and sound effects updates and fixes. The entire list of those can be seen in the patch notes, link in the description. Now I want to add a little bit of personal comment about the hazards. The hazards really need to be looked into more, because there's some things I didn't notice about the hazards. I would notice that when I'm leveling up, some hazards would one-shot me even if I have 60-70% damage reduction. And that's not me going with a high-level enemy in low-level zones. It's actually me leveling up and going, for example, as a level 18 to like level 21 map, and then boom, one shot by a poison spraying trap or by a flaming trap. So that's one type of hazard that I think is overpowered even still. I'm gonna check again with this update how that would be while leveling my new hero. Hopefully that has been sorted. Other types of hazards that need to be changed and looked into. I love that they nerfed blazing, that's amazing. I'm so happy that blazing has been nerfed, but there's other things such as the acidic end, where the enemy does poison damage over time filled when it dies. This is super overpowered, it's just immensely overpowered, especially if you kill multiple of those at one place, and then before you even realize that you've got poison underneath you, you're just dead. You don't even have a second to dodge sometimes, even with shit tons of resistance stacking and damage reduction, even on melee builds. Other hazards that could be overpowered is the Stormbringer, the Storm's End. It seems overpowered. I think they would change. I hope they would change some things in this. Now moving on to quests, there's a bunch of quests. I'm not gonna speak about everything in the big list, and my list is also much smaller than the big one, but still there's been changes to Brow Bro and Sadistic Sorcery. There's been changes to things that were causing double quest reward chests to spawn. They've changed certain rewards in specific quests like Unearthed Evidence Expansion Pack, the Astral Door, White Vaults, Decorative Shield, for Prop Account Reward, and other things like that. Then the Shared Stash Tab Story Quest rewards upon completing Brow Bro, Sadistic Sorcery and the Core Gateway are each granted once per account. They've updated the tutorial consumables. They've changed the quest tutorial to drop the consumable item from any chest instead of from any monster. They've reduced the required count of certain kills for certain quests. They reduced the required count of certain Netherim that you have to kill for certain quests as well. They've increased the progressive drop chance of certain quest items on specific quests. I'm not gonna go into details every single quest, but you're seeing on your screen right now those things, and you can read in detail in the patch notes. Again, links in the description for all three parts of the patch notes. They've increased the rate at which quest items drop for so many quests, and I'm happy. Hopefully I no longer see bugs where I can't complete a quest in a map work or a challenge map thanks to those fixes. We'll see how that is. They've updated the Phase Dungeon Portal Help tutorial text, they've updated the Town Portal tutorial text, Unlocking Skills tutorial text, and they removed the task to talk to Sergeant Quive from the tutorial from a humble seat, and they've updated the legendary unlocked pop-up tutorial text when playing on gamepad to press hotkey, then navigate to the legendarium tab from the skills panel. They fixed a typo in certain quests, removed some old obsolete quips from the Mysterious Wanderer NPC, and they've updated Kenny's dialogue test to match the audio voiceover in a specific quest. Now we're moving on to items and gear, and this is my favorite section every time. Me being a wood fiend and all, it's only natural for me to care the most about items and gear. So they fixed cases where players could consume items without gaining their benefits. They've decreased the chance that potions drop from champions slightly from 33 to 30%. And I wish they didn't. I wish they would make potions to drop much more often from champions. While leveling up, I really feel that sometimes it's not dropping as many potions. And it's annoying when you're killing a champion and you spend 1 or 2 or 3 potions just to try and kill that champion, and then you get a middle finger and you don't get the potion rewarded. It just doesn't feel nice. I wish certain champions, maybe the green and yellow champions, would have 100% chance to drop a potion and elites would have like 50. But I guess the developers thought the opposite, which is weird. Why? How did they not notice that it doesn't drop as much potions as it needs to while leveling up? They've resolved issues where the stash limit was reached sooner than expected, and the shared stash tab consumable item can now be destroyed. That's pretty nice. Contracts are now rewarding individual map scrolls instead of bundles of 3 map scrolls. And this is another change I really don't agree with. I really don't see a reason why they want that. I really don't agree with the death note that you're gonna see on your screen. And you can read in the patch notes. Why nerf map work? Some people really don't like the current version of the Fazeer. And the only way for those people to get fun endgame activity was the map works. And if they're not playing on ridiculous, they're not gonna get map works. From 6 maps every 10 contract levels, it's nerfed down to 1. So you're getting 6 times less maps. 6 times less than before. Why? What was so important of pushing players towards the Fazeer dungeon instead of maps? Why not have mapworks when Fazeer's is basically glorified mapworks on steroids, which is pretty boring and pretty overpowered and just not a fun experience, and it doesn't reward you enough. Mapworks was the perfect activity for players who are more casual to do. Now, more onto that, they shifted some of the map scrolls rewards in contracts around so they do not drop from the first 20 or so contract levels. They've reduced the number of map scroll rewards in the once through section of the adventurer's contract from 5 to 3, so that's the one-shot rewards. They've reduced the number of map scroll rewards in the whooping section of the adventurer's contract from 2 to 1. And since before it dropped a bundle of 3, 2 times, now it drops a single one time. As I said, it's 6 times less. And the dev note here, map scroll dungeons are intended to be a fun diversion from the story path of the game, or something that you use to grind out XP and collect gear if you get behind at higher levels. But we have not found that if players random map map scrolls dungeons as soon as they got them, they were early enough leveled that the XP and gear from the map scrolls dungeons could boost them enough that they would be over leveled for subsequent dungeons in the story. By giving you fewer of these and shifting them to later in your progression, we hope that tackling a dungeon or 2 won't ruin your normal sense of progression. But let people progress the way they want to. If I want to progress with maps, let me progress with maps. If I don't want to do the boring quests, the boring story mode, or Fazeer's dungeon, why are you removing this option from me? I loved being able to get map works. I loved being able to early in the leveling process of a hero, when for example I'm level 17 and I'm fighting level 21 Psora and she just one-shots me because my level is low. Now how am I gonna get those levels? I'm gonna have to grind certain zones of the quest zones and just exit and repeat that quest zone to reset it, and it was much easier to just open a map or to get some more levels, catch up with my... I mean, what they're saying, what they're doing now is doing exactly the opposite of what this note is stating. Maps were actually really helping me get XP and gear when I was whacking some in the early levels, not just in the high levels. So why should this be only for the high levels? And why should we get this little amount of maps? If you're playing on practice and not in ridiculous, you're barely gonna get enough fame to get enough maps to be able to run those. And why shouldn't Mapworks be just a second Mapworks activity? and why should Fazeer's dungeon be the only viable endgame activity? And again, Fazeer's is not fun for everyone. In fact, probably more than half of the people who play the game most likely don't enjoy Fazeer and don't think it's rewarding enough and don't think it's balanced enough. And it's just bad. It's terrible. I don't like it, and there's so many things about it that I don't like, and I've spoken about those so many times. And Mapworks was just a great way to have fun, to farm items, instead of being forced to do Fazeer dungeon level 60 plus farming. Now the only reason, the only way to farm items right now is farming specific Fazeer maps, which are unique and double fame. And yeah, that's just, it's not fun when this is the only way to get gear effectively. And it was pretty nice to farm those regular mapworks without having to worry about the boring blazing or the boring netherwell or plague bearer or other such modifiers like the stormbringer. Now back to this, map scrolls no longer change their affixes on pickup and stack when they shouldn't. Map scrolls now vary solely based on their beneficial affix. The primary element of the dungeon it will summon will now be a surprise to you, but the benefit is not. Are you prepared? Is it worth taking the chance? Another thing I'm not a big fan of, but okay, I mean with this I can deal with. There are now supply run, gold rush and wife bound and harvest maps in both rare and legendary quality, all of which stack up to 20 in a stack now, which is pretty great. The maps awarded from contracts now vary by contract, so you will be finding wife bound and gearwork maps in Adventurer, gold maps in the Homesteader and harvest maps in the Craftsman's contract, which is definitely a great change here. They fixed phase dungeons to not always give scrolls of Wifebound for bosses and boss chests, so now that has been sorted. They distributed armor covers across gear levels and rarities, they've added more variety to the cover of level 60 armor drops, and they fixed several imbalances with basic attack weapon damage across the various weapon types. So basic weapon damage has been changed as follows: bow and digitus and staff unchanged. Great weapons now deal 350% up from 175, which is a net change of 175. Mace now deals 150, down from 225, which is a net change of minus 75%. Pistols now deal 90%, up from 75, a net change of plus 15%. A rifle now deals 140, up from 100, net change of 40%, and sword deals 110, up from 75, a net change of 35%. Railhammer now deals 290, up from 200%, net change of 90%. And since the mace was a little bit buggy and on a Railmaster it was attacking slower than it normally does on other heroes, believe me, mace now is amazing. Even with this nerf to the mace, the speed it attacks with kind of makes up for it being a single target hit. I still think a sword is better because it hits multiple enemies with one slash, which means it can trigger multiple procs with just one hit, and probably still a better choice. But if you want single target damage, mace would be amazing because it has such a nice attack speed and such a nice single target damage. They fixed issues where weapon damage percentage numbers are set to 0 for all skills, class, relic, pet. Players receive equipped weapon to deal damage message in combat, even with the weapon equipped. I have no idea what this means. Is that supposed to be two different notes? Is that one big note? But why? How does this relate to this? How does the top part where weapon damage percentage numbers are set to 0 for all skills relates to the equipped weapon to deal damage message? I can't get this patch note right, no idea what they mean with it. Then players should be able to unlock legendary affixes on pickup, which is again an amazing change. You've set some status effects to they've set some status effects to properly respect immunity affixes. Wide Vault's Cave Breaker legendary affix is now working both in Legendarium and on the item itself, rather than just in the Legendarium as before. They removed the mana cost reduction affix for Shadow Step because it no longer uses mana, reduced the freeze chance on weapon affixes and reduced the duration across all rarities, and legendary affixes that refer to the relic power no longer drop until level 20. Set affixes that enhance other affixes like plus chance or plus duration. They've made them to not drop on items until level 20, when we're more familiar with the state of effects and have likely started to opt more into one of those. They've increased the chance values for many elemental proc status effects, including damage over times, to make them worth using, more worth using, and I love this change. It's amazing. For builds that need those effects to trigger certain things, certain procs. They removed affixes that add chance to elemental proc affixes from weapons and added those to buffs. They've removed affixes that add duration to elemental proc affixes from weapons, added those to boots and hatches. Amazing changes there as well, so we can focus more on damage for our weapons and get the chances on other places. This tuning path includes stun, bleed, blind, burn, chill, freeze, immobilize, poison, shock. And they fix cannons not dropping with a primary crit hit affix and bonus secondary affix like the two-handed weapons, except for the starter cannon, of course. So now we're gonna have extra crit chance on top of the damage on cannons, the same way we have on two-handers. They fixed the legendary power of the Raging Beater, and it functions as described finally. They fixed the legendary Cosmic Pants for the Realm Master that refer to an old skill Glacier instead of Frost Blast. Fixed the issue where the Cosmic Pants set bonus does not give 100% endurance restore chance on Spinning Blade. And fixed issues where older Mountain King Feet items for Forged appeared in Legendarium. Now only the wheel exists, that's the only locomotion of that cest in actual play, so the tentacle and threads have been removed from the list. They've added rare sharpshooter helm, wanderer's hat, and the shoulders called Courts of the Moon. They drop from Act 1 onwards, and from Act 2 onwards there's the new sharpshooter helm expedition hat and the shoulders champion pauldrons. They've also fixed one-handed mace animations, adjusted the forge movement with one-handed sword attacks, and all sword and mace based animations with the snake, bow, threads and crab. And that was it for the gear. The next parts of the patch notes would be in the other parts, in part 2 and part 3. If you like to watch those, you can check the description or the comments, or wait for the pop-up that gives you links to those. If you like to get notified when I upload more content such as build videos, guides, or videos like this where I'm bringing you some overviews of the patch or other news, you could subscribe to my channel, hit that bell button to not miss the notifications. Thanks for watching this video, Struck Up. Keep it cool until next time, and goodbye.